So how do dealers improve competitiveness in this constantly shifting marketplace? Well, first of all, just take a step back and let's focus on the core drivers to dealership profitability. Those really haven't changed very much. First and foremost, if you're a franchise new car dealership, the gasoline that drives your engine are new car sales. Not just total sales, but effective sales, meaning sales within the primary market area or area of responsibility is defined by your franchise agreement. But don't focus on them just to make your district manager or your manufacturer happy. The reason that's so important is the simple fact that the closer a buyer is to your dealership, the more likely they are to return for service, the more likely a referral they make to a friend or family is to return to your dealership and buy a car. And ultimately, the more likely they are to make a repeat purchase. So the first question before every dealer should be, how are we doing on sales effectiveness and what can we do to improve it? So the first place to spot check is advertising, almost the third rail for a car dealer. So if you just take a look at dollars per car spent on new car advertising, first of all, don't start down the should we do more TV or less radio, Google, or stay away from the mediums and the message and all that stuff. The first thing you need to figure out is, of the money we spend, how much is spent exclusively in our primary market area and how much is spent on a broader basis all the way out to market wide. So if you have spend $12,000 a month on direct mail and you look at the zip codes and 60% of them are in your primary market area, that means, right, you got $7,200 of exclusive investment in advertising in your PMA. Conversely, if you're buying broadcast TV and across the footprint of the broadcast DMA, there's 1,000 Chevrolets sold and you're selling 50, you're spending 5% of your TV budget exclusively in your PMA. If you're spending more than 50% of your budget on pump outs effectively, there's no way you're going to improve sales effectiveness. So the first check, dollars per car. Second component, segregate it so you can see exactly how much is spent exclusively in your PMA for all your mediums. And then take a step back and say, how do we start to spend more money exclusively in the PMA to drive sales effectiveness? From there, you can begin to test messaging and mediums to see what's the most effective way to reach that local market.
So, Jim, you mentioned a few key elements that I want to touch upon. But first, let me say that I am worried too many dealerships dedicate all of their efforts on driving traffic when the effectiveness of their sales teams are poor. If you haven't figured out how to make your team cutting edge at the basics, then no amount of money thrown to digital marketing is going to fix that profit leak. With that said, back on task, Jim, you mentioned about capturing business from your local market. And as tech has evolved recently, it is easier to target with dynamic ads your local in-market shoppers than ever before. And in 2017, that's a lot of the technology that you need to be investing in. Dealers need to invest in that, as well as how to enhance the engagement, quality engagement from their websites, and how to still, and I've said it for years, leverage video to increase their brand. It is more important now in 2017 than ever before. However, the only way any dealership should be throwing money across multiple digital spends would be if they really have keyed in on the newest attribution insights, because if you don't know what part of your budget is working for you, then it would be better to take that lump sum and dedicate it on making your sales and service teams work more effectively for your organization.
Joe, I think that's exactly right. And what I would say is that dealers that really want to compete strongly in 2017 and going forward really need to focus on what they're doing to get their sales force professional sales training, modern sales training, daily sales training that can be tracked, you can hold salespeople accountable for, because as a salesperson, I know that sometimes I get busy, I forget to do my training. But if I'm held accountable for it, and if that training offers valuable information that turns me into a pro that can handle a situation from start to finish, that's only going to make my dealership more competitive, and it's only going to make the customer experience better. And teach salespeople how to market themselves, how to build a personal brand, to put their own content out there, which in turn promotes the dealership. Dealers that do this and put a strong focus on this are going to not only compete in 2017, they're going to dominate their space.
Guys, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, Joe, you're right. The answer is in the data. We can't guess or play by ear anymore. And Scott, you're always right in terms of salespeople. Job is to build value in the product and me as a salesperson, and then ultimately the dealership or the Apple store, whatever it might be. It doesn't really matter. So what's common to both your points, though, is really the need for the salesperson to have a clear understanding of whom they're speaking with on the other side of the phone, whether they're texting or emailing, or obviously picking up a phone for a phone call. So it's important to understand really two things about, let's just kind of break the world in half, millennials and everybody else. So if you got a customer who's 47, their coming of age moment was most likely when they got their driver's license at 16. So they value a car much differently than a millennial whose coming of age moment in almost every case is the first phone they got from T-Mobile, from their iPhone. So they see those, the asset that you're trying to sell to them, a new or used car, in completely different manner. So that's the first thing you got to take into consideration. Number two is how you communicate with them. I'm just not talking about is it text or email or phone, but it's how you communicate and what you say. 47-year-old man or woman, even if they're just buying a van, because of how they see the car and the role of it in their lives, and because they bought 3 or 4 cars over the course of time, they're going to give you a little more latitude if you get a little too salesy or a little too dealerish, a little too road to a sale, if you will. Conversely, a millennial who really doesn't understand the process and doesn't like talking to people about buying things is not going to understand it. So you may feel like, wow, this is great, texting back and forth, emailing back and forth, but as soon as you get off track a little bit, make a pitch to come on down to the dealership, make a pitch to don't worry, it'll be all good when you get here, get a little too salesy, they'll go dark on the other side. You'll get ghosted. You don't know what ghosted is, that's when somebody's going back and forth electronically, text or email, and all of a sudden one side goes dark forever. So be aware of who's on the other side of the communications, what their coming of age moment was, how they define the value of that asset, and how they want to be communicated with, right? Millennials are pretty simple. Short, succinct, and case in point, if they ask you about the price, don't assume if it's an objection. If you want to answer and say, here's how we came to a market price for you, point them to a third-party site. Give them some information that'll validate why you're charging them, 5% below MSRP plus the incentives instead of 10%, right? Give them something logical that they can look at, study, and get comfortable with, and you do a lot better with that category of buyers.
So coming from the dealership training side, I've got to say the topic you touch on, Scott, investing in both coaching and technology to make teams more self-reliant to conduct their own business and to serve the customers better, gets me right here on the cockles of my heart. Spot on. And when Jim talks about, I couldn't agree more, when Jim talks about essentially understanding your customers' personas and validating their needs and their research with third-party info, I think those two things blend together very well with what else I believe customers should be focusing on. And when I say customers, dealers should be focusing on in 2017. And that is reaching customers shoppers, where their heart and their head is. That's mobile devices. So the information on a customer's mobile device is so precious to them that it is almost priceless. And you need to be reaching customers there with your advertising, with your branding, with your messaging, with your videos, with your inventory, with your pricing. And you need to open up the lines of not just communication, but open up the lines of research. If you can send customers valuable information of research data that's relevant to their inquiries, then you are going to win more online shoppers. I mean, I will tell you, if you influence the customer where their phone is, and you influence the content, then you will influence the user.
Absolutely. You definitely need to connect with your buyers online. All the studies show that whether it's millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers, people shop online first, and they spend hours shopping online, doing their research about the car, and then eventually hitting your site to research you and what you have available. So dealers that really want to step out and compete and get into that realm of dominating their space and capture more market share need to focus on their online presence. They need to focus on their website, making it user-friendly, providing the information that customers are looking for when they hit your site so that they don't end up clicking away to the competitor. And along with having a strong online presence, you need a social media presence. You need to be where your customers are, where they're talking about the cars they're thinking about, getting opinions from friends and family. Have a social media presence, be involved that way, so that when customers start trying to figure out who they're going to buy their car from, not necessarily what car they're going to buy, they think of you first.
Great job, guys. And Scott, I'll close leveraging your last suggestion that dealers take a look at how their website looks and feels. I think it's the most important thing a dealer can do. So 3 things to consider when you take a look at your site. Design, just overall, how does it look? And most importantly, how does the consumer see your site? Not you, but the consumer. Number 2, what tools do you have there? Are they really helping the consumer? Or are they helping you more? Or actually, are they hurting you? Number 3, what's the customer experience? So first of all, design. Forget about dealership websites, whether you sit in the office and do it or do it at home. Look at the top 20 websites that consumers love. Southwest.com, Amazon, any one of those sites that you love. I mean, if you have a travel site you use all the time, your banking site, if you use Venmo to transfer money to your kids, think about what those sites offer you and why they instantly make you comfortable enough to push a button and send money, to push a button and buy a $5,000 airline ticket. Just think about how they look. A lot less noise, more white space, contrast between white space and a number, an offer. This airline ticket's $400, this one's $300. $400 gets you there in 6 hours, $300 gets you there in 3.5 hours, right? The transparency and the information consumers need to confidently buy. Number 1 suggestion, get rid of the text widgets that float around your website. Even when somebody asks a question, there's a big latency between pressing, text and waiting for an answer. Most of the answers aren't very thorough or what the consumer is looking for, and it's followed immediately by a beg for an email or phone number. I would just recommend you skip that. I think you're bouncing more people and sending them further away than you're ever going to help yourself with that particular product. And then ultimately, it's about customer experience. How can you give a consumer, without completely redesigning your site, but how do you take away all the noise and just make it simpler for them to follow a natural path to purchase? Go buy a ticket on Southwest if that's where you fly, or United, or Kayak, or Expedia. Watch how they move the consumer through the process, how they inform them, how they give them options at just the right time. That's the future of your business. So if you want to improve your competitiveness in 2017, make it easier for people to buy cars. Good selling. Thanks for your time.